and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Security Squawk podcast. It's your go-to podcast for all things cybersecurity. I am your co-host, Brian, with Andre and Randy. How are you guys doing today?
Doing good. I miss our studio audience.
Oh, man. We kicked them out a while ago. Show flows better without them. So I think this is like show 187. Randy and I talked about it the last time we were on together when you weren't here. I don't know if that was last week or the week before. But I had mentioned to him, Andre, that somebody had posted on a Facebook group that I was in, like, we're looking for people with over 30 podcasts. So I went and looked, and I was like, oh, look at that. We have like 180. I think last week was 185. This is 186. So welcome to show 186. So that doesn't happen on a weekly podcast if you're not doing that for several years. So that's what we do on this show. We bring you the goods. We talk about cybersecurity. We've been updating you for over 3 years on the latest and greatest with cybersecurity. It'd be interesting to go back and watch our one of our early podcasts to see what the hell we were talking about. That would almost be like opening up a time capsule, probably, with the way things have changed in 3 years. But it'd be interesting. I might have to do that and just go back and maybe that would be a show one day where we grab one of those episodes and analyze what the hell we're saying.
Did you have long hair back then?
I had longer hair, only because I got a bad haircut last time I got my haircut.
What happened to supercuts, man?
No, sport clips. Sport clips.
Okay. Actually, I did. I just went on our YouTube channel. Our second episode was December the 2nd, 2020. Wow. And we were talking about SolarWinds hack. So that was what was making the news back then.
That was our first episode?
Our second episode.
Was 2020?
Yep, December. Yep.
It's only been 2 years?
Well, it's 2020.
December 2020.
2020. My bad. 4 years. Okay, we're going in our fourth year. Wow. Wow. Time flies when you're having fun. That's dedication, boys. So because of that dedication, remember, the show's free, but we do have a fee. And the fee is we ask that you like, share, subscribe, all the things that we have down there in the bottom corner. Wherever you consume this content, you can do something to help somebody else understand why this is worthwhile content to consume. We appreciate the support, and we'll continue to bring you really good episodes like the one we're going to bring you today, where we're going to talk about a few different topics, but we're going to lead into a deeper discussion about where we're at today with Ransomware-as-a-Service. We found a really good article that does a good job of, and the way I described it in the green room to Andre and Randy is that we're kind of like the boots on the ground reporting of what you get from when you're watching the news, right? You got the guys who are giving you the boots on the ground, kind of what's going on the ground. We're almost giving you this in real time, like what we're seeing in current attacks. And after time, as time goes on and these things happen, you get to see multiple attacks. It allows you to write stories like we're going to kind of use as our guide today to talk about this ransomware as a service. We're not going to say anything that we haven't said on this show multiple times, but it's always interesting, I think, to pull that lens back to that 35,000 foot level and kind of say, this is what's actually happening out there. This is how ransomware groups are working together on the dark web to make it really difficult for businesses today to defend against these types of attacks. So we'll get into how ransomware as a service has evolved today as we talk about these other interesting attacks that are in the news, because that's more important than the deeper discussion we're going to have. And this, number one, guys, this first one that we have on the docket is a major development out of the UK. And when we're talking about attacks outside of the US on this podcast, it typically means it's a pretty big deal, because we typically have enough content to cover a U.S. U.S. based companies that are being attacked all the time. But this one has kind of risen to the level of the world needs to know about it. And that's transportation for London, or TfL, has been hit by a cyber attack. And it's caused quite a stir. The National Crime Agency has jumped into action. They've launched a significant investigation into the breach, and early indications suggest that customer data hasn't been compromised. Interesting that they're doing and saying that, guys. We'll talk about that. Hasn't impacted transportation services directly, but the full extent of the damage is still unknown and under wraps. So what does an attack on a major public transportation network mean for a city's operational security? I mean, we've seen this actually in my own city several years ago. SEPTA, which is Philadelphia's kind of transportation authority, they were hit with a major cyber attack that actually took them down for a couple days. So what's going on here in London, guys?
So it looks like they're still trying to figure it out. They know that they're in there. They know that there's some impact, and some of their services are impacted, but they don't know exactly what they're dealing with. They don't know how they got in. So at least as of a couple days ago, when's this article from? This article is actually from yesterday. So as of yesterday, there was a lot of unknowns happening here. And then what you got to remember with London, I mean, London is one of the biggest cities in the world, one of the biggest cities in Europe. And for this to be hit like this, with all the stuff that's already going on in Europe, with Ukraine and Russia and all that jazz, this has the potential for being something serious.
Well, the good thing that we see so far is that only parts of their system is down, meaning the operational side is still, it's not like the article is saying like all of their buses and train systems are down. It seems like there's at least some type of, we always talk about like separating the network, segmenting the network. So it seems that the system that, as far as making sure that the trains operate and going from point A to point B, that's up. But then on the operational side or administrative side, that seems to be down right now.
So early, I caution cyber experts, and I think some of these security experts who claim to be security experts anyway, we see this rush now for a lot of these cybersecurity experts to run to the media with, their thoughts on what could be going on. So I'm just going off of an article that I pulled up here that's on Yahoo Finance, where there's cyber experts who appear not to be involved in the event or the investigation, who are saying things like poor digital hygiene may have contributed to the breach. We still don't have anything in writing that I can find that gives any specifics on the breach. Are we dealing with a denial of service? Are we dealing with ransomware? Are we dealing with, a third party who shouldn't have had access to data situation? They're saying that that's not potentially a possibility here. I'm just going to use my experience and analyzing thousands of attacks and say that what I'm seeing here is the early indications of a ransomware attack. Does anyone agree or disagree with that?
I don't disagree at all.
Okay. I mean, this is just how they go down normally. They think they're being tight-lipped, but at the end of the day, this is exactly how 30-40% of organizations behave when they get hit with ransomware.
Yep.
I mean,
exactly.
they'll all behave this way, but this is very indicative of a company, organization that doesn't want to come out and say we're dealing with a ransomware attack. We're going to talk about this in a little bit, right? With kind of ransomware as a service and kind of the warning signs that, and how we've said things over the years on the podcast that relate to what this guy's covering in the article. But same thing, we could say here is in play, where we see this stuff all the time. We see responses like this, and we know what the story is. We know what the deal is going to be, right? I can hear it now when, Andre says in 2 or 3 episodes, well, look, they said 3 weeks ago no information was accessed, but now here they are, and 1 million or 2 million people's information has been accessed as part of this attack. I mean, is that not how this usually plays out, Andre?
Yep.
Exactly it. Right now, we don't believe anything. No customers' data, no employees' information is out. Nothing to see here. Just a couple of people that have to work from home, and we'll get them back up. And then 2-3 weeks later, it's like, all right, this is really what happened. Sorry, here's 1 year credit report. Sorry. Can you forget about us now? Move on to something else.
Right. That's so true. And I think they're kind of banking on the fact that, going back to the thing we talk about pretty regularly, is that most people have not witnessed a ransomware attack intimately. And so most people aren't really aware of what goes on. And if they just come out and say, oh, it's just an attack, no data appears to have been stolen or whatever, like most people go, oh, it's just some hacker in their mom's basement, that hacked in, when in reality, it's probably a large criminal organization like RansomHub or somebody like that that's in there. But you're right. And there's this short news cycle, Andre. You know how it is. A week from now, something else will be going on. And even if we want to get excited about this particular ransomware attack, we won't be able to, because our attention will be on something else. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Maybe that's part of their strategy.
So there's a lot of questions here. We don't know if this is a ransomware attack, or we don't know if this is a more concerning aspect, which I don't know why people are surprised about these types of things. But it's almost like people treat the fact that you definitely have a risk out there of nation state actors inside of these types of networks, large organizations, critical infrastructure organizations, and nation state actors like Russia, China, Iran, North Korea. They want to gain access to their adversaries' infrastructure and lie dormant, not let you know that they're there in any way, shape, or form. And from time to time, these guys get caught. You introduce new technology. You have a new security team that comes in and they find things, and boom, now you've discovered that somebody's in your network. This could be absolutely what's at play here as well. I guess the interesting thing to me, guys, is there really is no disruption, it seems, to the operations, which, they did have to take things offline, but they're able to still operate. What do you make of that? Any insight there?
Kind of just goes back to what I was saying, is that it seems like the system that's actually running the trains or the buses is isolated from the administrative side. That's what I take from that.
Yeah, that's good, because we normally don't see that. And I guess we'll find out if that's the truth, or that's the reason, or they had some other really good backup manual way to continue to operate. Or maybe we're just not hearing about the horrible, stuff that the employees on the back end have to deal with. I would think that like something like trains, just like planes, I mean, the minute they have one blip, you see it. You know what I mean?
Could be that they're running on an older controller system on the trains. You know what I mean? That the ransomware is not even written for, some old form of Unix or something. You know what I mean? So you never know.
We'll find out. It'll be interesting. We'll learn a lot in the next few days and weeks, but big attack on a critical infrastructure in the UK, London transportation system, dealing with some kind of a cyber attack today that has caused them to take some, if not most, of their systems offline. So, guys, let's keep moving on here and talk about this RansomHub ransomware group. And we'll dovetail that into this deeper discussion about ransomware as a service and kind of where things are at today as we kind of wrap up the show here in the next 7 minutes. But quickly, RansomWare-Hub is in the news this week and has been in the news lately. For one, they hit Halliburton, which disrupted the company's IT systems and business operations at the end of August. That was then followed by U.S. agencies warning against this group just a few days later. So about a week later, after they hit different organizations, the U.S. FBI and CISA have come out, and HHS as well. So a triple threat advisory. That more than 210 organizations have had to deal with this ransomware group, RansomHub, since February. So do the math that quickly, Andre. Pull out your trusted calculator. Since February, that's roughly 6 months, 5 months, I would say. 210 organizations in 5 months. How many hits is that?
A little more than one a day.
It's crazy, right?
Yeah, that's what, 25? Am I right?
A
month?
Yeah, I mean,
About.
So that's where you're at. 210. I divide it by 5 months.
Yeah, it's like 40, 45 attacks.
Okay. Hey, I was a C student.
42 a month.
Wow.
Right. And if you even say there's 30 days, that's 1.4 a day. So they're ransoming 1.4 companies a day. That I don't think there's been a ransomware group that has been that prolific ever. Like, but there is a group that I'm aware of that I was on their dark web leak site the other day, and they're racking up the hits too. Can't remember who it was, but if I think of it, I'll let you know. So here's what's going on, right? Let's talk about what the FBI is saying about this group and why you should be so worried about it. I mean, not only do they attack you from a million different places, they like to go after about every vulnerability known to man for remote access tools. They exploit Citrix. They exploit Fortinet. They exploit Java OpenWire protocol, Confluence, which is a big cloud thing. Undisclosed requests for big IP systems. Fortinet, again, Microsoft Windows SMB1, if you still have that turned on, they like to use that to use and abuse your network access. They also netlog on for Windows, a vulnerability in there. Vulnerabilities also for zero logon privileges for Windows, another vulnerability there. All these, so the last three vulnerabilities, all Windows, all patched since we started the podcast. They're all vulnerabilities that are 2020 and older. So these are all old vulnerabilities that they're taking advantage of, and we'll talk about that a little bit because I have some interesting information I've learned over the last week or so that I think plays into what I just kind of alluded to right there with these Windows patches and the ages of them. But that's really it. I mean, RansomWare-Hub, they come at you hard. They look for all kinds of different vulnerabilities, hoping that you have a technology in place that has not been patched in some way, shape, or form. And they take advantage of that very, very quickly. They launch, once they get their escalation and lateral movement in place by using one of those vulnerabilities, they exfiltrate data using tools like Putty to an Amazon S3 bucket. And they use legitimate tools like WinSCP, Arclone, Cobalt Strike, Metasploit to conduct their attacks. These are all things that are freely available. They don't need anything special. They can just download it onto the systems if they can get them there. And then they use a elliptic curve encryption algorithm to encrypt a lot of files on your system, and then you're presented with a ransomware note. So what are your thoughts here, guys? RansomWare-Hub, pretty brutal organization, hitting over one organization every single day, about 1.5. And if you factor in the fact that, most businesses don't operate 7 days a week, you're probably hitting about 2 companies a day in business terms. So thoughts on RansomHub and thoughts on Ransomware-as-a-Service?
Well, I will say that nobody's going to care for another 2 weeks. And the reason is because Halliburton provides 20 to 25% of the global market share in the oil field reserve sector. So if they continue to be down and they keep their services and systems shut down, in 2 weeks we're going to feel it in our pockets when we go fill up our gas tank. Now, not Randy. Randy's got the electric vehicles. He'll be okay. But for Brian and I, we're going to feel it at the gas station.
Okay, I do have one hybrid, and I have solar, but I don't have a full EV. Brian, we've talked about it several times on this show, and ransomware-as-a-service, what that means, for if anyone's listening and doesn't know, it just means that someone does all the programming and they're getting all the stuff ready and learning everything, and then they just it's like they sell accounts to like a 2-bit criminal, and that 2-bit criminal, all they have to do is get the access, and then they can use this service that they pay a subscription for to then get in to a lot of places. So it makes sense that it would be one of the most prolific ones, because it's not as much waiting around for someone to pull the trigger once access is gained or whatever. So I'm not surprised that it's prolific. I'm not surprised that we're seeing more and more of it, and it looks like this is going to be a pretty big one from the perspective of, say, like the CISA, the FBI, trying to bring organizations down. So I would say if it's going to be the wave of the future for real, we're going to see more and more of this, I think.
Well, I will say is, especially how they were talking about affiliates. So it's not the big ones making the news, it's the small ones. So it's the same way like how the US, we prepare for wars with different countries, but then when you look at all the I don't want to say terrorist attacks, but the attacks, what is it? It's that lone wolf. It's that one that can just kind of go right between where nobody's paying attention, and that's really what we have to be careful for.
Yeah, so we talked about these groups, right? We talked about how in the beginning ransomware groups kind of did everything themselves, right? And they kind of figured out we're really good at doing one thing: getting these files encrypted quickly so people can't use them, exfiltrating the data quickly so we don't get caught. It doesn't take us too long. The longer it takes, the higher chance we have of getting caught. Right. So they perfected these things and got really good at it, to the tune of they're willing to work with people who break in the networks and get access to, they'll give you 90% of what the ransomware earns. Right. And they keep 10%. So they only want a small piece of when they do this. Right. So these ransomware groups, when they attack and they ask for $1 million, that ransomware group that you're dealing with, that you're negotiating with, is probably only going to keep 100,000, right? They were working with an affiliate who actually broke into your network, right? Which brings an interesting kind of dynamic to the relationship, right? Because then you really don't have the autonomy, or you don't want to be negotiating down, because that's a lot less money for you, and you're also negotiating down what a third party is willing to take. So when these negotiations happen, you're not negotiating with one group anymore. You're negotiating with, they have to go back and they have to check with the initial access brokers and say, look, they only want to pay 500,000. Are you willing to take that? And if the answer is no, then the ransomware group has to continue to negotiate to try to get what some of these affiliates might want. And sometimes we've seen things break down in these groups too, where maybe the ransomware group decides, you know what, we're just going to take all the money and not pay our affiliates and go. We've seen that with other ransomware groups, and they usually fold up and, you know, go away after that. But these are all the complexities of ransomware as a service that seem to be favoring the cyber criminals right now, but they don't come without their own challenges, as do most businesses, right, gentlemen?
Yeah, it's like an episode of Deal or No Deal.
Yeah, right. So that, you know, that kind of puts a kind of bow on kind of how these ransomware attacks happen, what ransomware groups are doing today. When we post the podcast, we'll share the link to this HelpNet Security, which gives a nice rundown if you want to take the time to read it. Gives a nice high level discussion about all these things in a deeper level than what we're ever going to get to on this show. So if you want to geek out and nerd out, we'll provide that as a resource in the descriptions when we post the podcast or post this on social media. Randy, you have some fanboys on the comment section. I'm not going to post anything on the show. You can reach out to Josh and send him your love. And that'll do it for me. You guys got anything you want to add?
Yeah, I know I had to leave at 2, but if you have a few more minutes, if we can cover Columbus for a moment.
Oh, good one. Yeah, sure. I can stay as long as you need me to, sir.
Yeah. I just can't talk about Columbus. I don't want the judge to come after me.
Yeah, I know, right? So interesting thing here. I actually did a YouTube video on Columbus, and I actually talked about it last week on the podcast, I believe, with Randy, where I was calling this guy out for basically, you know, the first misstep that this guy made was when the data started to get released. They were like, oh, look, all the data they have is encrypted. And I was like, big deal. Like, that one day can be decrypted. And then, like, the day after, the mayor went and, you know, touted the fact that most of the data that they stole from the city was encrypted. These guys come out and they release information from the courts. And it had, like, all the case information, it had criminal information, it had informant information, it had undercover police information. So this, you know, as I said to Randy during the show, I'm like, this isn't stuff you really want getting out there. Well, apparently a cybersecurity researcher kind of did the same thing, but he actually went on the dark web and started taking the stuff from the dark web and putting it on the surface web. And the Columbus elected officials took issue with that and charged them. And I don't know what all the details are. Andre, you can kind of fill the gaps here. But the way I understand it is politicians brought charges against them, and they found some judge in the system who was willing to just kind of blindly agree with what they were charging them with, and they went forward with it. And, you know, for me, I kind of skimmed through the article because I'm like, oh, Jesus, like, these guys, all I was thinking was these politicians and this judge have no idea what they're even talking about, the things that they're saying. And this is going to turn ugly on these guys real quick.
So just to clarify, he did put it in the surface web,
right?
Like he took that information and put it into where someone can Google it, easily Google it or whatever.
Right, but there's people who have Twitter accounts that are constantly like, you can follow Twitter accounts that all they do, somebody wrote a program that says, hey, when this ransomware group posts an update, take a screenshot of the post and then post it to my Twitter account. It happens automatically. It's not even like a person's doing it. And so, like, any politician, any person who thinks like this dark web is like some underworld that, like, you need to have special, like, I don't know, powers to, like, access, which is how these people are in Columbus are acting. That is not the case. It is simple. It is, you can literally just download a web browser on your computer and go on the dark web. It is not a big deal. There's no hoops to jump through to get there. You just need to know how to navigate it, which is a little bit more complex than how Google makes the internet today, but no different than how, like, GeoCities was, or whatever the hell that stuff was back in the day when the internet wasn't indexed like it is today.
What this this is really disturbing for me, because the people wouldn't know if he didn't release the data. It's like when a researcher finds a vulnerability in a software and goes to say, like Microsoft, like, hey, we found this vulnerability, and Microsoft says, we're not interested.
No, it's more like Microsoft going, no, we're going to go sue you now, or we're going to charge, we're going to go bring this to the authorities.
Exactly. When they do finally release it, because at some point, so sure, you try to get the city to say, or whoever, you try to get them to admit to it, at least let people know their data's been leaked on the dark web. You're going to be involved in, phishing attempts and things like that. So you ought to be ready for it. You should lock your credit.
Your security researcher he's local, right? He's in Columbus. I guess that's probably why they picked on him, would be my guess.
Probably.
Get to him. Like if this guy was sitting in outer Mongolia, they wouldn't be dumping resources to go find this guy.
Yeah, exactly. It's just really frustrating, because the people need to know that their data had been leaked and all that. So
yeah, we're all worried about bullying in school. We need to be worrying about bullying in real life too. When politicians decide to bully some dude because he lives in Columbus and he happens to be a cybersecurity researcher and is just doing simple stuff. This is nothing he did was illegal. Nothing he did was. This is crazy to me. Like, this is going to get thrown out so fast. I'm interested to learn what happens to this judge and these politicians who are forcing this play, because it's not going to play out well for them.
On her website, the judge has her personal Gmail address. So I don't know that she's down with the cool kids on cybersecurity. And then, like I said to you guys in the green room, this is why we are where we are with cybersecurity, because your elected officials, this is how clueless they are about this stuff. So when they get like a bill around cybersecurity presented to them, they don't know. Like they do nothing with them because they don't know this stuff and they don't care. Now, I'm not saying they should, but maybe you should go talk to cyber experts like me, Randy, and Andre, and figure out what this bill means and should we be moving forward with this, right? Not doing anything, which seems to be the default reflex of our elected officials, is we're not going to do anything when it comes to this stuff because we don't understand it. Exactly.
So that's why we're in this world with cybersecurity, and the state we're in is because our elected officials, and this is all the Columbus thing does is prove my point. It just shows you this is the state of our cybersecurity as it goes to our elected officials, where they think doing something like this on the dark web is completely unheard of, and like nobody should be doing this kind of stuff. It's taboo. It's like dancing.
Wow.
It's like dancing in Texas. You're not allowed to do that in Texas.
Dancing's huge in Texas, so you got to think of something else. But anyway,
they made a whole movie on that. Footloose. Footloose is a great.
Yeah, that did not take place in Texas. It was like Pennsylvania or somewhere.
You gotta watch it, buddy. Pennsylvania. Good show, guys. I appreciate the insight as always. Anything last words, or are we all good?
Just for the record, upon the advice of counsel, I was not able to provide any information about the Columbus granted temporary order. So please don't come after me, Columbus.
Come get me. Come and get me. So, all right, guys. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys next week. Take care.